So this perspective, which is that I'm Vivaharika, is as follows. It says, as an individual, all you're considering right now is your physical body. All you're considering is your physical body, including your brain, which is part of your physical body. You're somehow assuming that this consciousness that you have, that this feeling of self, the feeling of myself, this me who's looking at everything, who perceives everything, this me, you're beginning to, you feel as if, okay, I don't understand how this is created, but somehow this is created by my physical body. And this sort of feeling is further reaffirmed because what you see is other people. And in the case of other people, you see that they seem to be alive and they seem to be aware, but the moment their body perishes, they are no longer seeming to be aware. So you are assuming, therefore, that because they are not aware when they perish, you're assuming that this awareness is a product of the body, of the living body. And when the living body is gone, the awareness is gone. So Vedanta is saying that is an incorrect way of looking at things. And you're looking at it like this because you are failing to recognize the true nature of this awareness. So it has various exercises that it takes you through to make you see this awareness in a different light. Like it tells you about, it is you who's looking at your dreams, it is you who's looking at your waking state, it is you in your dream sleep state and all that. So there are a whole lot of exercises that it takes you. It tells you that this awareness is the ultimate subject, and how the ultimate subject, meaning the ultimate perceiver, can never be perceived. So we've gone through those exercises, and we'll continue to go through them again. But the whole purpose of that is to shift our focus to say, no, that this thinking that my awareness is a product of my body is not correct. Let's start thinking about it differently, which is that I am not just my physical body. I am a combination of my physical body and my subtle body. My subtle body is what has this awareness. And this subtle body, awareness for the subtle body also is coming from something called Atma. But since we are all talking about me as an individual, we've not reached a stage where I'm the Atma. We are talking about me as an individual. We are saying, let's focus on the subtle body. Because that's where the awareness, the reflected awareness is housed, coming from the Atma. So we focus on the subtle body. The subtle body has the awareness. It has the ability to perceive. It has the will to do actions. The physical body, which we see around us, is just like a dress that is worn on top of your body. Just like, when you look at me, I'm wearing a shirt and vest and all that, and I'm wearing my glasses. That's not me. You might say, I am actually the body. The body is wearing the dress. This dress I can remove anytime. I can wear a new dress, depending upon what I want to do. If I have to go to the Himalayas, that's my intention, then I will wear a warm jacket. And if I have to go to the tropics in India, I'll wear a cotton shirt. So the dress, the outer dress, is dependent upon what needs to be done. Similarly, for the subtle body, the physical body is an outer dress. What physical body the subtle body assumes depends on what needs to be done. What needs to be done depends upon your prarabdha karma. So if your karma says that you need to be getting these experiences, you need to be getting an experience of a very happy experience, of a person, very cultured person who can discriminate in a very pleasant environment, then your subtle body will be given a physical body, which is very pleasant, very, perfect in all its senses. It will be able to see much better than everything else, will be able to hear much better, will be able to appreciate, the brain will be able to appreciate finer points of music, for example. And you might be sent to a loka where all the environment exists, which is, pleasant environment, with a body which can appreciate the pleasant environment. There's no point having a pleasant environment if your body can't appreciate it, right? Bandar kya jane adrak ka swad. So you need both. You need a body which can appreciate that pleasant environment, and you need the pleasant environment. So that's why it's called the loka that you go to, and the physical body that you get depends on your prarabdha karma. It depends on what needs to be done. So that's the perspective that Vedanta is trying to tell you, that you are the subtle body. The subtle body is given this physical body for a period of time. Then when that work is done, then the subtle body removes that physical body, and that loka, that world, gets a new world and a new body in accordance with whatever is next on your prarabdha which needs to be done. And what is next depends on your actions of this world and your past actions, right? So that is a different perspective of yourself as an individual. You're still an individual. You're different from Atul, is different from Mukta, is different from Paula, everybody. So you're an individual. You're different from God. But you're not an individual physical body. You're an individual subtle body. And this individual subtle body takes on the physical body. And there are just enormous number of reasons why this makes sense. Like, for example, if you think about experience, you'll see that it's impossible for the physical body to experience anything, to have that feeling of experience. That needs a different sort of medium. So all this is stuff that we go through when we learn Vedanta. But at the end of the day, everything is a vritti. Everything is a thought modification. What you're seeing, you're not really seeing an object out there. You're seeing the impression that object has created on yourself. That's all you can see. Through, by converting it through the light, through electrical impulses which go through your brain, then processed in your brain, and then received somewhere. So the experience is actually the feeling of pleasure, joy, the feeling of being able to see something or hear something. All that is a very subtle thing which is happening at the subtle body. So what Vedanta is doing is it's focusing your attention on that experience, on that subtle body, rather than on the outside object. That it's not, rather than focusing on the object that is being experienced, it's taking your mind away and focusing your attention on the process of experience itself. And what does it mean? And who is experiencing it? And and that's why it's talking about all of this. Now, so this is sort of the first step of Vedanta. It's expanding your mind from thinking about yourself as physical body to a subtle body, from thinking yourself as bound to only this few years that you have on this world, to a much longer, almost unending time, when you have been experiencing all of this. And this takes you one step closer to moksha. It takes you it's an intermediate step for you to understand, for you to get to where you ultimately need to get to. The ultimate destination is you're not even the subtle body. The you in the subtle body is a reflected you. It's an assumed you, because the subtle body is the mind. And then it takes you to, okay, that you, even the subtle body can't have its own awareness. That awareness has to be non-dual. It has to be one. And it is what you really are, the feeling of you that you have really is that awareness, not the subtle body. You're confusing the awareness with the subtle body. You're confusing the awareness which you feel in the subtle body with yourself. Or maybe that's also not correct. The awareness that you feel, which you've attributed to your subtle body, is actually not connected with the subtle body at all. Even if your subtle body had to vanish, that awareness will always remain. That feeling that you have of awareness will always remain. That's what Vedanta is trying to say. That's the ultimate goal. Because there's only one awareness. Okay, so chapters 1 through 7 of the Gita and 9 through 18, all when they talk about Atma, by and large, they talk about, when they talk about moksha, they talk about this, knowing that you are Atma, knowing that you are unperishable, imperishable, cannot be perished, are never born, things like that. Chapter 8 is the only chapter which actually focuses a lot more on the subtle body part and on how the subtle body travels, right? And what is the gati? What is the travel? Like I said, so the subtle body has a physical body. When the physical body's work is done, when your work is done for the present life and your prarabdha is complete, then you give away this physical body as you a new one. That in between process of moving from one body at death to a next body at birth is called gati. It's called the path. So that in between process could be Shukla Gati, Krishna Gati, or any other Gati. If you're destined in your next birth to be in Brahma Loka as a as an upasaka, that is how you get to Brahma Loka. You've done a lot of good things. If your destination for the next birth is Brahma Loka, then the path that takes you to Brahma Loka is called Shukla Gati, the bright path. If your next destination is Swarga, then the path that takes you to Swarg is called the Krishna Gati, or the dark path. And if your next destination is anywhere else, there are countless other places you could go in various different things, then you have different paths, which Gita has not discussed. It's just trying to tell you that there are these paths. Okay. And this chapter doesn't go into that much detail, but Brahma Sutra, because it is looking at Chandogya and Brihadaryanka Upanishads, it tells you a lot more about this path. So if you are okay with what we've discussed so far, any questions so far as context? Yeah.
When you say that the awareness always remains, that's not the awareness that we normally think of, or is it?
The awareness
that you that I'm aware of where I am, the heat, the cold, but if my body disappears, how will that awareness awareness will also disappear?
So what you are aware of is what are modulations in that awareness. What you call cold and heat are basically modulations in awareness. In other words, you have to be aware of something, right? So for how would you be, let's say you have to listen to radio. There's something called frequency modulation. That signal is implanted on the frequency. There's a modulation, and then the modulation of the frequency is separated out from the base frequency, and then you hear that separately, right? When you see something, let's say you're sitting in the lounge and you've got a laptop in front of you, you're seeing that laptop. That initial signal that comes to you from the laptop is a modulation of light. There is a light wave, right? That light wave is being modulated. And that modulation is in accordance with the object which it's hitting. And that modulation is what your retina is recognizing. And then saying, okay, there is light and there's the modulation on that light. I will recognize that modulation. That modulation tells me that there is a laptop in front of you. You understand? Do you follow that? Yeah. Because otherwise, it's the same light. From the same light, you can see the laptop. You can also see the table. What's the difference? The difference is that the modulation of the light done by the table is different than the modulation of the light done by the laptop. That's how you're seeing. So,
okay, but what part remains?
So the parallel here is that there is underlying light which you're not aware of. It's the light which is being modulated, which you're seeing as laptop or table. But your focus and attention is all on the modulation, on the laptop and the table. If I was to ask you, this is very interesting. If I was to ask you, tell me all the things which are around you, You'll name everything one by one. You'll say there's a table, there's a laptop, there's a chair, there are people, there are lights overhead, there is a ceiling. You'll say everything. But you will not tell me that there is light. Actually, there is light itself, which is enabling you to see all of this. What your retina is sensitive to really is the light. It's not sensitive to the modulation as such. It's sensitive to the light and to the modulation in the light. Your awareness is just like that.
But if I was to touch this thing, so now it's a sense. It's a different sense I'm
It's a
using.
different sense.
So I'm not depending on light.
So when you're touching, what you're aware, what the medium that is communicating that is electricity from your fingertips, right? Through to your brain. The medium is electricity, and the modulation is in the electrical impulse. Actually, that's there in light too, because we were only just now talking only till the retina. From the retina to your brain, all the communication is happening through electricity. What I'm trying to get to.
What will remain?
Huh?
What will remain? Which part will remain?
What do you mean will remain?
When you say that awareness will always be there.
That's what I'm trying to tell you. So what will remain is the light. What will remain is the awareness. See, because if you think about, this is a very, very oft repeated example in Vedanta. It's one of, in my opinion, a very good example of trying to tell you what consciousness is meant by in Vedanta. When you think about light as consciousness, what it's trying to tell you is that you think that, why do you know that you're aware? You know you're aware because you can see the objects. You can see, when you open your eyes, you can see a laptop. That's why you think you're aware. If there was no object, let's say you were in complete darkness, there was nothing there. They were not even your thoughts, because thoughts are also like an object, an internal object. They're also modulations in consciousness. Let's say there was nothing. Would you know that you're aware? You wouldn't. It's like there is nothing. There's nobody to know even that you're aware. Even the one to know is a modulation in consciousness. But you will not feel dead. When you close your eyes and you stop seeing, you don't start feeling dead. When you go to sleep, when all thoughts are gone, I'm not talking about a dream stage. When you're dreaming, then thoughts are there because those thoughts are being projected as your dreams. I'm talking about the deep sleep stage. When you're not dreaming, when you're not awake, nothing, there are no thoughts. You have no knowledge of the passage of time. You may have slept for 1 hour. Normally, deep sleep, you don't usually get to sleep for more than an hour at a time. And then you get into the REM stage and then you start dreaming. But if you, during that time of deep sleep, there is nothing, there's no activity in your mind. But the point is, you don't feel dead. So what Vedanta is trying to tell you is that the awareness is the light. The objects are modulations in that light, but the awareness is the light. And you are not the objects. You're the one who's aware of the objects. You are the light. Your mind feels that if you are the light, that your mind feels, I need to be able to see some modulation to know that I'm alive. Because the mind itself is a modulation in that light. So that's what we are all we see and all we notice are these modulations. And we know that when I die, when this body doesn't remain, those modulations will go away. There's nothing to observe those modulations. So you're afraid you will die. We are afraid because we are not noticing right now at this moment itself that everything we see is a modulation, and it's a modulation in consciousness, which is the light. That consciousness is never gone. What goes and comes are the modulations in consciousness, are the objects in consciousness. They come and they go. They come and they go, and they're always coming and going. Nothing is static. Everything, your whole experience around you is constantly changing. But what is it changing in? What is that light, that medium in which this experience is coming and going? That is you. That has never changed, and it has never come, and it has never gone, and it will never come and never go. That will never change. That you, we never notice. We just somehow feel, hey, this modulation should not go away. Because this modulation is telling me that because I'm aware of this modulation of these objects, it's telling me I'm alive. But it's only telling this to the mind. That's the thing you have to remember. And the mind itself is a modulation. Okay. This is, from a cognitive perspective and intellectual perspective, this is the essence of Vedanta. And you have to get this and understand this properly. And it may take time, that is fine. But really try to understand, what is it that remains? What is it that is actually consciousness? And you remember there's something called neti? Because you'll point out and say, okay, now that's consciousness. You'll say, no. The moment you can point out to something and say that, it is not consciousness. It's an object in consciousness.
That would apply to light also, right?
Yeah, that's
so when you say that.
Of course, totally. Light is also just that. So it's an example, it's an illustration. There is, what your consciousness is, Advitya. There is no parallel to it. At best, I can give you some examples which will make you think like that. But this is just a pointer.
This puts totally new, much higher dimension to all in a one this.
Yes, exactly. It is all in a one. That is what is Advaita. It's all in a one, and everything is in this one, and we never recognize this one. This one is here and now, right now. It's there at this moment, and that is all there is. So,
जो संजय कहता है ना कि we should have started Vedanta much earlier. So we actually did. We just didn't realize.
Yeah, I mean, we've always been Paramarthika. We just never realized. Right now, because this is the thing, only when your mind gets ready and you're in the right environment and everything is right, one insight will click. And then for a long time, there'll be nothing. And then suddenly you will again be in a different environment and another insight will click. Carol used to tell us that Swami Dayanand was a fantastic teacher. And she used to tell us why he's a fantastic teacher. And, I keep, because I'm trying to teach you guys, I struggle with it all the time. He was a fantastic teacher, she said, because he created an environment of complete relaxation in his class. Fun and relaxation. He used to laugh and joke, and people used to laugh, and they were completely relaxed. Their mind was completely open. Nothing was, there were no like guardrails or suspicion, nothing. And then when the environment was like that, suddenly he'll drop one insight, plop, one thought, like we just talked about what is consciousness, right? That one thing will drop in and it will be received as an aha. Because people's mind is open, the student's mind is open. They are willing to see it. And you don't have to go make too many, just one is fine in one class, or one is fine in 10 classes. And then you keep going, and then you keep regurgitating it, and then again he'll drop another one. I mean, for this you require, you're going to go away from the syllabus of Vedanta. You require very thorough knowledge and very complete understanding, and an understanding of where the other person is and what that person needs to know. So that is like a very sort of remarkable heights of teaching. But you got to make do with what you get. So that's it. You have whatever is around you. You have me to tell you whatever I can tell you. You have YouTube, you have everything. This is what you have right now. And keep going with what you have, and eventually something will plop. Something will. Okay. So I think, really reflect about this, think about it, because I do this quite often. And that's why I'm asking you to do also, because sometimes when you're just sitting and you're seeing something, just try to imagine what is it that you're seeing. Like, exactly what are you seeing? What you're really seeing is yourself. What you think is a lamp in front of me here, or a cup in front of me, is nothing but me. It's just like saying it's light. It's a modulation in light, right? Similarly, what I'm seeing is a modulation in myself. That's all I can see. How can I see something which is not me? What will be the process through which that something which is not me will come and hit me, and then I will see if it hits me and makes an impact on me, right? And in any case, that impact is what I will feel. If I touch you, Mukta, and I poke my finger on your hand, what are you feeling? You're feeling the pressure on your hand. That's what you're feeling. My finger has made an impact on you. That impact has created a pressure. It has pressed some of the nerve endings in your skin. That compression of the nerve endings in your skin is what you're feeling. When you say it's my finger which has touched you, that rest of it is all a mental process. Through experience, you know that when I have an impact like this, of this dimension, of this type, typically it's a finger. And since it's Dheeraj's finger, I can see from my eyes, then I know, okay, that my finger is what I feel. The rest of it is just a mental cognitive process which fills in the gaps for you. But what you actually felt is the pressure on your nerves. The fact that the nerve endings got compressed. That's what you felt. That's all you can feel. Even that nerve ending got compressed, it got transmitted from the skin to your brain, and from your brain to your consciousness, wherever. Ultimately, you can only feel if if you, let's say you, whatever you are, consciousness or whatever, if you are feeling something, there has been some change in you. That is why you're feeling that. There is some modulation in you. That is what you're feeling. So if you're seeing something, it's going through a big process. Light comes, hits your eye. From the eye, it goes to your brain. From the brain, it goes somewhere else. All that process is taking place. But at the end of the day, when it is being felt, at the end of all of that process, it has had to make an impact on your consciousness. It has had to modify your consciousness in some way, some modulation in consciousness. That modulation is what you feel. So what is it that you're feeling? Just yourself. Changes in yourself. All that you see, all that you feel, all that you touch, everything is nothing but a change in yourself, is a modulation in yourself. This is not crazy science. This is very logical stuff. I mean, if you just kind of venture to think about it.
नहीं, ये modulations को ही तो वृत्ति कहते हैं ना.
बिल्कुल, exactly. That is vritti.
That's
Everything is a vritti in yourself. So from the light example, all there is light, and there are modulations in the light. But of course, light itself is a modulation, as Atul said. All there is consciousness, and there are modulations in consciousness. Now the point is, and I'm sorry to kind of take you here and then confuse you again. The point is that is also not correct, because the consciousness is non-dual. There cannot be a modulation in consciousness. Consciousness is not in parts that it can be modulated. The consciousness, whatever it will modulate to, is also already there. It's already that. So it's not precisely a modulation in consciousness. It's an apparent modulation in consciousness. And that apparent modulation in consciousness is what's called mithya. It's not an actual modification in consciousness. But anyway, don't bother about that part. Just get this part, that everything that you experience, not just see, that you experience, is a modification in yourself. That's all it is. Experience could be what you see, what you hear, what you touch, what you smell, what you feel, what you think, what you imagine, what you dream. All that is an experience. Any modulation in consciousness is called experience. It's the other way around. It's not that all you experience is a modulation in consciousness. A modulation in consciousness is actually called experience. We call a modulation in consciousness, we call it experience. And we break it up into perception or feeling or thought. That's just a notional breakup. Okay. Enough. So I don't know whether we have the mental wherewithal to go back to chapter 8. Because we were supposed to talk about the Gati.
I'm going to bail out in the next minute or two
You
anyway.
bail out.
So
Yeah. Anything else? Any other Paula? Any question or anybody else want to discuss about anything else? The Gati part is really, it's mechanical. It's not. I mean, I can tell you about it, but it's just it's detail.
No question. Just trying to assimilate all this.
So the Gati is just, I mean, basically what it's trying to tell you is it breaks up the process of death and going into kind of 3 or 4 steps. So as a subtle body, okay, I'm going back to the subtle body now, right? Which is living, and then now the prarabdha is done, so it's not going to die. So at the time of death, the subtle body departs from this physical body, okay? And that process is called Uttakranti. That means departure. And that's for the first phase of the dying process. When you actually die, what happens? So remember, the subtle body has the mind. The subtle body has the mind, right? And it has the sense organs, the subtle sense organs. These are not really sense organs. Ears and eyes, they're just instruments, like the camera, microphone, right? That's what it is. This is gramophone, speaker. So the sense organs are what's behind them. They are supposed to be subtle. They are the ones who recognize these inputs which are being received by these external sense organs, which are called gokuls. They're called gokuls, gokula. So those sense organs in the subtle body, there are, like I said, remember we used to tell you there are 5 sense organs and 5 organs of action. So 5 sense organs are your eyes, corresponding to your eyes, ears, basically sight, taste, smell, or touch, feeling. When there's a 5th one, hearing, right? So 5 sense organs and 5 organs of action. Organs of action are arms, legs, movement of the legs, excretion, reproduction. There were 5. So the intent, and they're called organs of action, are subtle because the intention to do anything comes from that subtle organ, right? They are the drivers. The legs are just like wheels of a car. The car is not the one which is intending to move. You press the accelerator and it moves. The one who's intending for the car to move is you. Similarly, the one who's intending for the foot to make the movement because it wants to go somewhere is the subtle organ of action. The subtle organ of the foot, the movement. Right? So that's why it's called the organ of action, a subtle organ of action. The foot is just an instrument. Instead of the foot, I could have I actually have an artificial bone in there, right? Doesn't matter, whatever. Nothing happens to my subtle organ of action is still intact. In fact, nothing can happen to it. So you have the 5 subtle organs of perception, sense, and 5 subtle organs of action. You have the mind. The mind has 4 aspects to it, which again we've talked about. the manas, which is the state of the mind when it is in agitation, in emotion. That state of the mind is called manas. Then there's buddhi. Buddhi is the state of the mind, the same mind, when it is at a point of certainty. Of certainty, that means knowledge. It knows. There's no vacillation up and down. That's what knowledge is, right? That's what buddhi is. When you know I'm doing something. Then there's a state of the mind which is called chitta, which is when it's reflecting on something past, remembering past things. That's called chitta, memories. And then there's a state of the mind called the ahamkar. What is ahamkar? That is when it's having a thought about itself. When it's identifying itself with something. When you're thinking about yourself. And your ahamkar right now says, I'm this body. So your mind in your ahamkar stage feels, I am this body. This body is me. Right? So those are the 4 stages of the mind. And then there are 5 pranas. The total of 19 things in the subtle body. The 5 pranas are, I don't remember the names, but there is the Mahaprana, which is the life force, which is what provides energy to everything in your body. When you say na pran chale gaye, so we mean that Mahaprana, that pran chale gaye. When the pran departs, then your body is lifeless. It's sort of the infrastructure, the powerhouse, the main battery, which provides power to the rest of your body for it to function. So that's one prana. And then there is a prana of the breath, inhale, which makes you inhale and exhale. There's a prana which makes you digest your food. There's a prana which makes you excrete your waste products. There's a prana which is for reproduction. So there are 5 pranas. The 5 pranas, 4 elements of the mind, 4 aspects of the mind, 5 organs of action, 5 organs of perception. That makes a total of 19. These 19 aspects are there in your subtle body. This is a package of these 19 things. This package travels together. So when we say that we are dying, this package of 19 is departing from your body. And when it departs from your body, what remains of the physical body is just matter. You're dead. So this process of departure is called Uttakranti. That's the first part. Then there's the process of travel, and then there are other aspects of what happens in the new loka and so on and so forth, the process of birth. So we can just quickly talk about Uttakranti today, and then we will continue next time. So now what happens when you're dying? So what happens is that first, your sense organs, right now the subtle sense organs, they're all over your physical body. Your subtle organ of the eye is connected to your eye. It's kind of sitting, physically they're saying it's near the eye. The sense organ of touch is all over your body. The sense organ of hearing is connected to your ear and everything. So at the moment of death, the first thing that happens is that these sense organs, the subtle sense organs which are spread out all over, they start coalescing, they start compacting, they come back to your hridayam. Hridayam is not your heart really, but it's an area which is kind of close to your heart. Hriday, So all of them coalesce into the hriday. I mean, I'm just telling you what I've read in Vedanta, okay? I have no proof of all this. But this is what the Vedas say. And that's why they say when you're dying, you suddenly, you stop losing your senses. You can't talk, you can't see, you stop hearing. In fact, it's funny, I remember Carol told me a long time ago. She said that when she was in India, she was traveling, she was very young, maybe 19, 20 years old. And she had just gone to India. And she was traveling from Rishikesh, or Hardwar, Rishikesh, somewhere by train to Madras, to Coimbatore. She wanted to go to Coimbatore, but the train was to Madras and then she had to change. And, the whole gang of students, brahmacharis, was traveling together with Swamiji, like bunch of them. And she had cholera in India. So both cholera hota tha. And she felt extremely sick. And there was no doctor in the train. So all the entire 3 days, she was going to take 3 days of journey from Rishikesh by train to Madras. She was completely, like, by the time she was close to reaching Madras, she said, I was almost dying. And she was totally unable to move. So at Madras station, they got a stretcher. They took her to a hospital. Swamiji said, no, take her rightly to the hospital right away. So she went to the hospital and she said, I was being wheeled into this room in the hospital. And she said, suddenly I used to feel I'm seeing, and then my sight is gone. And then it was flicker. The sight used to flicker. And then the sight used to come back, and then it used to go again. And she said, I could feel my sight going. I could feel my hearing going. I could feel, little by little, all these things are just going. And she said, then there was a doctor who was treating her, and they were working on her. And suddenly she said, okay, it came back. And then it all came back. So it was basically an experience where she was very close to death, almost dying, and then she was revived. She was young, healthy. So she got revived. But why she was saying all this was, she was describing all this. She said, this is happening, but at no stage did I think that I'm dying. At no stage did I feel like I'm going. I could feel my sight going. I could feel my hearing going, but I was there. I never felt that I'm going. So this is something which just stuck with her. Everybody has some experience which sort of is something you lean back on and you say, okay, it kind of drives you to know more. This was kind of her experience. And she said that was remarkable, like I remember everything was going away, but I didn't feel like I'm going. And this happens to us every night when we sleep. We welcome it. We want to go to sleep. And we're just waiting, oh, neend aa jaye. I wish I could sleep. And then slowly, the world around you is gone. And then sometimes you're woken up. When you're just about to sleep, you're woken up. And then you say, oh, why are you waking me up? Then you're kind of dragged back into this world. But this happens every night. Our senses stop. And we either go into deep sleep or we go into dream sleep. But it's not an unpleasant experience. We never feel that as I'm sleeping, I'm going away. You never feel like, hey, I'm vanishing. Oh, I'm vanishing. The world is vanishing in the sense that you can't see it anymore. So anyway, that's an aside. But that's kind of what happens when you're at the stage of departure. Each of your senses, they start collapsing into your hridaya. That's the first stage. So the mind is still active, the manas is still active, but the sense organs are inactive. So it's not that you're incapable of thinking, you're incapable of perception, you're incapable of internal perception. You can still have a dialogue within yourself, but you're not capable of external perception. You can't see, you can't talk, you cannot, and that's okay. You don't have the energy at that point to be doing a lot of external perception. You're fine. But that's what happens. The next stage is the mind itself starts folding. And the mind becomes avyakta. That means the mind stops. That is just like deep sleep. And when the mind stops, that is the sleep. And at that point, when the mind stops, your pranas, the whole subtle body collapses, basically. The pranas, the mind, the sense organs, they all collapse into a little body. That is the point of death. As far as our shastras are concerned, you're dying there, you're dead there. You're dead because your subtle bodies are collapsed, your mind has collapsed, your pranas, they're all into one little capsule, ready to depart. That's death. And then the departure takes place. The first phase of the departure is the internal journey. So departure from the hridayam to any pore of your body. So, if you're a Brahma Upasaka, some lucky people, their departure happens from the top of the head. Some other people will depart from somewhere else. But from you, basically, that journey is called the internal journey. And there are nadis in the body, nerves, through which the subtle body departs. And then after that departure from that point, that external point, to the next loka is called the external journey. That's the gatis we were talking about, Shukla Gati, Krishna Gati, this and that. Right? So I think that's good for today. Next time
one small Joe, what we're talking about, that the senses slowly like they start converging or coming towards the
collapse. Yeah.
But when you grow old, with the passing of your age, I mean years, and all your senses, they weaken.
Yes.
As it is also.
Correct. Your prana weakens. So what happens is the prana, which is the life force, that's the one which is providing the energy to all of these things. Your senses, your mind, everything. That prana gets weaker and weaker.
Okay.
So everything, it's like the battery mein jo pehle 3 volt ki battery thi, now suddenly it's got only 1.5 volts.
Got it.
So everything, the whole system is lacking energy.
Yeah.
Right?
In fact, the whole body, weakens, all the senses and everything weakens.
Weakens, yeah. So we are not even talking about the physical body, we are talking about the subtle body. So the subtle body doesn't change as such, it doesn't die. It's not that the senses are getting old. The subtle senses are not getting old. The pranas are no longer as strong.
Okay.
Right? So, and then you just move into the next body. And then the pranas finally depart. When the pranas depart, that's the departure. But technically, the death happens even just at the moment before the pranas depart from the body. The pranas depart from the hridayam, that is death. So, in the beginning, death stages, the pranas are in your body. They're just departing from the hridayam to some pore of your body, some opening in the body. That's the internal journey of the death. And then the external journey. So death is that moment when your mind has gone to sleep. So death is literally like sleep. So all this journey that happens when you're that capsule of the jiva, which is collapsed. And next time I'll tell you a little bit more about this capsule too, what all is part of it. When all this happens, the mind has gone to sleep. So you will not be aware of this. You're not going to be aware of you departing or travel. The travel is in your sleep. You're sleeping.
But then if the prana energy weakens, then that's in the subtle body itself.
Yes, yeah.
Now this subtle body moves, and then this subtle body only takes another body.
That's right.
Then it is full of energy again.
Yes. So it's not. So again, it's not a weakened is a wrong way to think about it. It begins to collapse. It begins to become unmanifest. It gets into a state of sleep. Everything, including the pranas, get into a state of unmanifestation. Everything gets, it's collapsing.
Here I'll give you some clarification. With age, only the physical body, the physical instruments, they get weakened. Your inside pranas may be working all right, but bahar ka external apparatus weak ho gaya hai, so you don't get that quality of eyesight or that quality of sound or that quality of understanding. Aapka brain degenerate ho gaya hai, so whatever you are thinking and everything, wo replicate nahi ho pata.
No, that is true.
That level.
But the pranas also I mean, weaken is the wrong word, but they begin to collapse. Everything begins to fold back into
Yeah,
its
वो तो
itself.
encoil होते हैं
Yeah.
ना वापस, like
हाँ,
they go to the
exactly.
seed state.
They
Seed
go to the
state, from the
unmanifest
tree
state,
state,
unmanifest state, exactly.
हाँ,
And when the final,
unmanifest.
when you're completely unmanifest, when
Yeah.
when you're totally in there, that is death.
Hmm.
Right? When you're totally into that, what you call the seed state, right? That is death. But it's not like one moment you're totally fine. I mean, that can also happen. That one moment you're totally fine and the other moment you're dead, right? If you have an accident or something. But
Yeah.
that's not the way the normal activity is, that you go through a process of old age, where not just the physical body, of course is changing, but the subtle body is also coalescing into its seed stage.
Yeah.
I mean, even you can see, like, some old people, that the eyes may be just fine, but they still can't, for some time they won't see. There is nothing, जैसे Carol को हुआ था, right? She felt as if everything was going. She couldn't feel her eyes. She couldn't see anything. She couldn't hear anything. It's not that her eyes suddenly became blind or that she couldn't hear anything. So that can also happen, that the physical body can also go through change. But what we are talking
नहीं,
about...
देखो कैरल के केस में we can explain like that, but she had cholera, she went into dehydration and extreme weakness, her BP was fluctuating and all the brain functions, they were going up and down. So she could see, she could then again, dizziness was there, blurring was there, sounds were coming, they were disappearing. So you can explain on that level, yeah, she had gone into cholera and due to dehydration, all this was happening.
I mean, you can see there is always an explanation on the physical part.
Yeah.
For anything, right? You can even explain death physically.
Yeah.
You can explain how, because of the cellular process stops, there's no energy being produced. So so that's a physical way of looking at it.
Yeah.
But there's a corresponding subtle way also. So what we are looking at is the subtle aspect. What is happening to the subtle body, right? Anyway, chalo. And I mean, I also don't have any personal experience of all this, so it's not like I'm only repeating, what I'm learning. Nothing more than that. I'm just a mouthpiece when it comes to this stuff.
No, subtle aspect mein to we can say, yeah, there is our subtle self, which is a witness to all these things. This is what is happening to our physical body. There's a subtle aspect who is the witness.
Yes, exactly. Yes, that is true. There's a subtle aspect which is a witness, and but you have to also account for the pranas. You got to account for the pranas,
and it's not wavering, and it can observe all these things happening in the body.
Yeah, but it gets its energy from the pranas, and it gets its it gets its power to observe through the subtle sense organs.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, let's call it a night.
Okay.
We'll talk a little more about this next time, and then we'll also cover the other parts of chapter 8, and then time to move on to new chapters. There's a lot of interesting stuff coming in the Gita. See, the third part of the Gita, the chapters 13 onwards, they talk about values, which is also, we've never actually spoken about that. That's very interesting too. What is the right thing to do? And those are the kinds of things which people remember about the Gita, which we haven't really touched so much. Most people
so far.
We've been talking too much about this Gyan stuff. Chalo.
Sure.
Okay.